You can, because
Wait. Okey-dokey.
So hello, everyone. Welcome to the Florida Family Therapy Alliance. This is our workshop on mediation, beginning mediation for marriage and family therapists. I'm thankful that you found us here on YouTube. Danielle Pond, one of our board members, is our presenter today. She is known to me because I was her teacher at Capella University, and she is now a graduate and working on her licensure. But the most interesting thing is that she started doing mediation before she even had her master's degree. So I'm very interested to hear what her process was, and we look forward to your questions at the end. So I'll be monitoring the chat for those questions, Danielle.
Okay.
And but otherwise, please further your introduction and start our workshop.
Okey-dokey. Let me know if you guys can see my screen. Everybody's got it?
Yep.
All right. Love it when technology actually does what it's supposed to do. All right, so hi, I'm so excited to get to talk about this because I think mediation is really cool. So like Dr. Scully said, I did start my mediation practice while I was in my MFT program, basically as a bridge between my former life as a marketing director and my move to therapy. I wanted experience with high conflict families. I wanted to see how I would handle that and how I liked it, and to learn some of the skills that we use in therapy every day, but in a different capacity. So it was kind of a way to baby step my way from one world to another. But along the way, I learned so much, and I made so many interesting contacts, and I know a lot of attorneys now if anybody needs a referral. And I picked up, a lot of valuable complementary skills from mediation that I do use in therapy, and kind of vice versa. The two professions are, in my opinion, very different in a lot of ways, but the foundational skills are also very similar. And if you guys do have questions, like Dr. Scully said, just put them in the chat box and I'll try to answer all of them at the end. This is not a super long talk, so please put questions in the chat box. So my hope today is to introduce you to the mediation profession, to explain, what it is that mediators do and the role we serve in the family court system here in Florida. So let's do it. So I'm not going to dig into any detail about mediation agreements and final judgments and all of that kind of stuff today. But I could do a follow-up on that if you guys are interested, I could talk more about it. But basically today we're just going to talk about what mediation is, how you can get started, why therapists make great mediators, why we have kind of complementary skills. But if there's interest to get more detail, you do have to do a training class to be certified to mediate. So they do cover extensively a lot of stuff, but I've also had to learn about a lot of stuff the hard way. So, and borrow templates from different mediators that I trained with and different things along the way. So I'm always happy to share templates and information with people. So, okay, so what is family mediation? So family mediation is really a legal process that's used in family law to help resolve contested cases before they go to a hearing or a trial. So in Florida family law, family mediation is always ordered before a case can go to trial. It's actually a mandatory step in the family law process. Everybody has to stop here. It's kind of a stopgap for the courts to prevent overload and backlog in the trial docket, which is always overloaded anyway. So I don't know how well this is working for them, but we do resolve a lot of the cases. So there's actually 3 pathways to get to mediation in Florida for litigants. So the first way is that before a couple has filed a case, they're considered self-represented litigants if they don't have an attorney and they're pro se. They can agree to come to a private family mediator like me and split my fees between the 2 of them. The key word here is agree. That doesn't always happen. They must voluntarily agree to come to the mediator to come to me or pick another mediator, and then they have to agree to pay that person's fees. If either party disagrees, then you have to go through the court's process and wait for the court to order you guys to order them to mediation, which they will. They'll end up there some way. It's just a little bit longer of a process. And I'll kind of talk about that a little bit more. There's no court order involved this way, so it's totally voluntary for them to show up. So the second way is once a family law action is filed, so a dissolution of marriage or a petition to establish paternity and related relief, the court will order the case to family mediation through that circuit's mediation unit. Every circuit in Florida has a mediation unit. It's called FMU, Family Mediation Unit. So, and this is usually the cheapest option for families, and it is income restricted. So families that are making more than $50,000 combined will each pay $120. So the petitioner and the respondent will each pay $120. If they make less than $50,000 combined, they'll each pay $60. Okay. And the last route is that litigants who have an attorney in a family law case likely make too much money to use FMU anyway, right? So they can agree to hire a private mediator rather than use the court-ordered mediation. And then the private mediator will just file a notice with the court, letting them know that they're using me for their mediation requirement, that I'm going to file an outcome so that they don't get in trouble for not doing what was ordered. So I came up with 5 reasons why therapists make great mediators, but I'm sure there's a lot more. I'm sure if we open the room up, everybody has reasons that make sense. But so the first one I thought of was that because mediation always, I don't want to say always, most of the time involves high conflict parties, and therapists are particularly well trained to deal with high conflict people. That makes us well suited to the profession. It's also interesting that you don't need any legal background or education to mediate in Florida. I'll go through the requirements to become a mediator. It does help if you have a master's degree, you get more points. It's a point system to get to the amount of points you need to get certified, but you don't actually have to be a lawyer, paralegal, or have any formal education in the law. Everything you learn, everything you need to know, they'll teach you in the training class. And the other thing is mediation often involves child-related issues, and we're all well trained on child development stages and mental health crisis for teens and all these different things. Or the parties, the litigants themselves, the mom and the dad in the case oftentimes have some sort of mental health issue. So our background in understanding various disorders really helps you help families find solutions that may appeal to them. The fourth one I thought of was that mediation is a really great break from therapy to avoid burnout. So right now I do therapy Mondays and Tuesdays all day. Wednesdays and Thursdays I mediate, and Fridays I work until 2, so that I don't have any long stretches where I'm like back to back to back and getting to the point of where I'm burning out. I also work in trauma, so anyone else who works in trauma knows that you need to moderate your schedule appropriately. And then the last one I thought of is that in private mediation, you can set your own rates. You basically, as a private mediator, get paid like a lawyer. So you can set your rates. You can earn a lot more per hour. If anyone's had to hire a lawyer lately, you know it's not cheap. So basically, people in the legal process will look at you like a legal professional, and you can charge the same rates. And you know, it's harder to find those pro se cases, but once you get going, you get connections with family law attorneys. You'll start getting referrals. You make friends with some of the FMU ladies in the different circuits. They'll start sending you referrals, and it's a nice little side business once you get it going. Okay, so how does it work? So in Florida, mediation certification is granted by the Florida Supreme Court. And then mediators are governed by the Dispute Resolution Center. So the DRC is basically like the 491 board for us as therapists. It's the same equivalent. They make sure we're following the ethical guidelines. They put out MEAC opinions from the justices if there's specific cases that have come before them that the rest of the mediation community needs to know about. They do all of this kind of governing stuff. And they provide, so just like in therapy where you need CEUs, as a mediator, you need CEUs. And they are the ones that host and provide a lot of those. There's also a couple of associations in Florida that offer training classes you can use for CEUs. So how do you get certified? So it's helpful. You don't need a master's degree in any field, but if you have a master's degree in any field, that's like half the amount of points that you need to go ahead and get certified. I have a master's degree in communications. So when I was working as a marketing director, I got that done. So during COVID, I realized that I was going to have almost half the points that I needed already just from having that degree that had nothing to do with the law. So it made it a lot faster for me to get licensed. And also when I got licensed during COVID, that was when everybody went to virtual. So I've only ever done mediations on Zoom. I don't actually know how to do it in person. To be honest with you, I've only ever been on Zoom. And so it's really convenient and you can just do it from anywhere as long as you have privacy. There is an online course that you have to complete and there's several of those available. And then you have to pass a level 3 background check and submit to fingerprinting, which for people who are already therapists is not a problem because we've all been background checked to get to this point. And then you need to complete a number of observations with a certified family mediator. I have observers contact me all the time and sit in on sessions. It's just one of the requirements. And since COVID, the number has changed on how many observations you need. I had someone observing last week that said they needed 15. Someone else said they needed 10. I don't really know what the exact number is right now, but you can find it on the DRC's website, I'm sure. So just check how many you would need. But I'm always happy to do that too. Okay, so scope and limitations of practice. So mediation is protected by confidentiality laws, just like therapy, but it's a little bit different. So just like in therapy, you have to be careful during mediation to make sure that the client understands the scope of the limitations of what you can and can't disclose if something came up. But the only thing we can disclose if somebody says it in terms of mediation is if they tell you that they've committed a crime or that they plan to commit a crime. It's very specific. So the other requirements that we're used to regarding self-harm or, legal, somebody trying to subpoena the record, like none of that really applies in this case. It's really just if they tell you that they've committed a crime, then you have to report it because you work for the court. So you should probably report it. So people often come to mediation with some sort of strategy in mind. And so it's important before you go back and forth in the breakout rooms to just check what exactly did you want me to share with the other party? What do you want me to hold in confidentiality? What do you not want me to disclose? So that way people can kind of maintain, because they may tell you, hey, what I'm really willing to do, it's like car sales, right? It's like, what I'm really willing to do is give them everything and just leave. And you're like, okay, but what am I actually saying? Because what they want you to communicate is different than what they actually will tell you in the room. So it's a little cat and mouse in mediation, especially during contested divorces. So because it's confidential, obviously nobody can be in the room except for the parties and their respective attorneys. Or if they need a designated agent. So like if somebody has disabilities or has mental incapacity of some sort, they'll have a designated agent that the court has already provided. And that person is there to negotiate on their behalf. So the other important thing is that mediators can never offer legal advice or procedural advice. So this applies even if you are a barred attorney working as a mediator in Florida, which there are a lot of them. When you know stuff, you still can't say it. So it's almost an advantage as a therapist that I'm like, I don't know, because then I can't get in hot water for sharing information that is like right there. I mean, I think it would be really hard to do this job and to not offer advice if I was actually an attorney, to be honest with you. I think it would be harder. And so the last point is that mediation is always voluntary. So even when people are court ordered to appear in mediation, they're never required to settle. What that means is show up for whatever amount of time you consider negotiating in good faith, and then they can leave at any point that they want. Okay, so either party can choose to impasse the mediation at any time. And that's whether mediation is court ordered or private. Nobody ever has to settle there. It obviously has a lot of advantages, and I'll go over that, what the advantages are for people and why you would want to settle in mediation. But some people show up and negotiate in good faith, and some people show up and say, okay, see ya. And you can't really do a lot about that. Okay, so who's paying for this? So in pre-suit pro se mediation, so somebody that like a couple that comes to me as a private mediator and they haven't filed anything yet, the cost of mediation is typically split by the parties 50-50. And then if it's ordered through FMU, you have to pay the court order fee, whether you're in the $60 bracket or the $120 bracket. I don't really have any, it just is what it is. But in most cases, it's the most equitable and favorable way is to split. I have had people try to negotiate about that specific point. But honestly, I kind of tell them, like, by the time you spend 30 minutes arguing about this, you know, at $250 an hour, you probably could have just paid your half and gone on your way. So sometimes you can talk people out of it. Okay, so how does mediation benefit clients, right? People who need to file a lawsuit. So mediation gives the parties much more control over the outcome of their case than trial, because litigants get to make concessions that they can live with and not end up with whatever standard solution the court comes up with. And those are always guided by the statutes, and they're just not flexible, and they really don't consider that family's unique needs or circumstances. They really are bound by a lot of structural rules, and you're typically going to get X, Y, or Z, and you all have to live with that. And that's usually not what people want to end up with. So when people call and say, hey, should I do private mediation so I have more time to get this done? I usually say yes, because it'll get done faster and you'll get an agreement that you can live with, not something that the court just handed down. Mediation, even if they don't settle, also is beneficial in that it gives the clients a glimpse into what the other party is demanding, and how reasonable or unreasonable their positions are. So that can help them with trial prep. I've had some people book mediations with a very high conflict counterparty just so that they could figure out what the heck they were even asking for. So it can be helpful. And then mediation normally allows the case to be resolved much faster than court, right? You can go to a private mediator. I can do all your documents for you. You can walk into the courthouse and say, here you go, and pay your filing fee, and they will file it. They'll process it, and they'll send you to a Zoom hearing to have it ordered by the judge. They'll issue a final judgment. It's really quick. The other way around is a lot more twists and turns, and it takes a lot longer. And if you end up going to trial at some point, you're going to end up hiring a lawyer, and that's a whole other expense. Okay, so what topics need to be covered in mediation? This really depends on the type of case that you get, right? So if it's a full dissolution of marriage case, you have to do everything from assets and debt all the way down through all of the elements of the parenting plan. It's pretty extensive. If it's just a paternity case, you only need to do a parenting plan and calculate the child support and then assign paternity. And that's it. So division of assets, this covers what is fair and equitable distribution of assets acquired during the marriage and debts acquired during the marriage. Who's going to get stuck with what, who's paying for what is fair is a loaded question in my world, because everyone has their own ideas about that. You know, your job as a mediator is not to get sucked into the fray and do your deep breathing exercises and to just remind everybody that, you know, we have a goal here. Like, we're all going to make concessions. I always tell people in mediation, if you're unhappy, it was probably a really good deal because they're unhappy too. Everybody's going to come leave here a little bit unhappy. It's not like therapy at all where you're trying to make people happy before they leave. No one's ever happy when they leave mediation, other than the fact that it's done. Alimony is another thing that we have to deal with a lot. You know, will either party be seeking alimony, and if so, what kind? There are 3 kinds of alimony in Florida. There's permanent alimony, which is pretty hard to get right now. The statute's pretty difficult. There's lump sum alimony, or rehabilitative, which is only for a specific period of time. Are there any other entitlements? Are there any retirement earnings, pensions, 401k plans, extensive stock portfolios? What do they have and what do they need to divide up? You need
Danielle,
to know.
looks like we have some audio issues for you. Once again, if you are looking for credit for today's workshop, please put your license number into the chat so that I can harvest that and properly give you credit. If you if you were intending to have credit, but have not registered through Eventbrite, then we'll need to do something else. We'll have to figure that out. So please put that in the chat as well. So if you did not register Eventbrite, you are wanting CE credits, put a message to that effect in the chat. And so I can give everybody credit that is looking for that. Okay. Does anyone have any questions at this point? So then when Danielle comes back on, we can ask those questions. Anyone have a question? Oh, Danielle, you're back?
I think I'm back.
You're back. Carry on, ma'am. Carry on.
Sorry. Thank you for interrupting. I would have just kept yappering away. No one knows what I'm saying. Sorry about that, guys. Where did I leave off? Was it entitlements, alimony?
Alimony. To that.
Alimony. Okay, so alimony, there's 3 kinds of alimony. There's permanent alimony, which the statute is pretty hard to meet on that. If the parties agree in mediation for some type of permanent alimony, that's fine. But the truth is, if they went to court, permanent alimony is extremely hard to get. The other types are lump sum or rehabilitative alimony, which is only for a specific period of time, like a year or 2 years usually. You have to see if there's any other entitlements. Are there any retirement earnings? Are there any pension plans? Are there any stock portfolios? Any of that kind of stuff that needs to be considered and divided up. When you, if they have children that were born or adopted during the marriage, you have to create a parenting plan in order to get a dissolution of marriage through, unless you bifurcate it and you settle the dissolution of marriage and you set aside the parenting plan and all of that and have to do that later. The courts don't really like to do that, but it has happened. So with a parenting plan, you have to figure out what type of schedule works. In Florida, the concept of custody has been replaced by time sharing. So now you have a time sharing schedule, and then there is an order on parental responsibility and decision-making authority. Those are 2 separate things. So you could technically have full time sharing, but limited parental responsibility and decision-making authority, or vice versa. Okay, so those are 2 separate concepts. The other thing you have to figure out is child support. How much child support is going to be paid is a really important thing, and we are responsible for that as the mediator in the case. So child support is calculated by a specific formula in Florida, and it uses each parent's gross monthly income, who pays for health insurance premiums for the kids, that can go in there. The percentage of overnights for each parent goes in there, that's a big piece of it. And then if there's daycare expenses, that could go in there too. I often tell people to consider leaving daycare expenses out though, because the kids will age out of the daycare and then the child support calculation is wrong. The process to get modification is really long. So I don't recommend it. And in Florida, since I think it was last July, a new statute went into effect that basically says that there is now a presumption that equal time sharing is in the best interest of the minor children in any relationship. So the courts are heavily trying to get 50-50 time sharing whenever it's like physically feasible, and as long as they're both appropriate parents, like if they can handle it. Another stuff like life insurance, health insurance, uncovered expenses, dental expenses, medical expenses. How are the parents going to communicate with the child when they're with the other parents? How are the parents going to communicate with each other? If they're high conflict, I often will recommend that they use a co-parenting software like Our Family Wizard or Talking Parents. They're both apps that can be monitored by an attorney, can be submitted to the court as part of your exhibits in a case. So and they're time and date stamped, and the parent has to log in. So it meets all the statutory requirements for evidence. So it's a good thing if you have high conflict people that are just always taking each other to court. I always tell people to do that.
So Danielle, we have a question from Shirley.
Sure. Hey, Shirley.
Hi, really quick. So all of this information that you're gathering, the mediator does that, not the actual lawyer?
So a lot of times mediators work with pro se litigants. So these are people that don't have a lawyer. So you have to collect this information from them.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you.
You see anybody else with a question, Dr. Scully?
Not at this time.
Okay. Other things, how is education costs going to be shared? Who will be a designated parent for school zoning? That can often turn into a battle royale. Sometimes you have to set that issue aside for the court to determine later. And then daycare expenses, how will childcare expenses be paid if they're not going to be put into the time sharing or into the child support order? So a lot of different pieces. Okay.
We have a question from Jessica. Since we are mandated reporters as counselors, would we still have to report imminent harm even though a mediator doesn't require it?
No. We actually can't, not unless they say they're going to commit a crime. It actually would be a breach of confidentiality to say something. Now, you can always report it to the family mediation unit, and then they can make a determination if they want to report it. But you, as the private mediator, probably wouldn't do it. Good question. So this gets asked a lot, is an attorney required to mediate? So no, you can absolutely, anyone can absolutely just file a divorce or paternity case or modification action on your own. Without an attorney, you can go into the courthouse and fill out the paperwork and file it. And it's important to note that certified mediators, we never act in the capacity of an attorney. We're not allowed to give any legal advice, financial advice, property settlement. We don't give any advice. We're just the middleman. We just try to keep the peace and go back and forth and hope that they're going to come up with a solution. And then, prior to executing the agreement, the parties are advised that if they have any question about what they're doing is right, they should consult with their lawyer, CPA, financial advisor, any other professional. And if they sign that MSA, that mediated settlement agreement, they are basically saying, okay, I agree, I have been fully informed. All pro se parties do have the right to have an attorney present, and they can voluntarily decide to mediate their case without an attorney. It's totally up to them. I have pro se people come and bring an attorney. I have people that have an attorney and they don't even bring them to the mediation. I don't know why they didn't do that, but it happens. Another important thing is that the mediator assumes no personal or financial liability stemming from any decision any party agrees to during mediation. This needs to be everywhere, on your website, in your engagement agreement, in your email signature, like everywhere. If you come to mediation with me and you sign something, that's on you, friend. That's on you. You have no liability for it. And so every mediator should have their own mediation engagement agreement and a release form that says, I cannot be subpoenaed, but if I do, I'm going to charge you $500 an hour to show up. And if I am subpoenaed, everything you told me during the mediation session was confidential anyway, so I'm going to say I can't answer that. You really want to dissuade them from suing you to bring you into the fray of any kind of battle. And most of the time, knock on wood, they don't try to do it. They really don't.
Danielle, we have another question. We have a question from Lauren who says, if she took mediation training in Boston, is she able to work as a mediator in Florida?
Good question. I think you have to retake the Florida training because it's specific to Florida family law. You'll probably sail right through it because you already have that experience. But yeah, you still have to do Florida's training. Florida has its own sort of specific way of doing things. Kind of like with therapy, you know, just because you're licensed in another state doesn't mean it's going to work here.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay, so this is a typical notice of mediation. So at the top, it'll have the county, the case number, the petitioner's name, the respondent's name, the date right there in the middle, and then it'll have the Zoom information of the mediator that you've been assigned to. So that's my Zoom information. And then down at the bottom, it'll have the contact information. Hopefully you get the contact information. So when people are pro se, it'll have their address, phone number, and email, hopefully. Otherwise, it'll just be the attorney's information. So you won't always have the party's information. And then this is a mediation outcome sheet. This is what we have to file to the court after every session, that if it was court ordered, to let them know that we completed the session and that this is what happened. So basically, it's got all the same information on the top as a notice. It has the date of the mediation, and then you have to say who showed up and how. Did they show up pro se? Did they not show up at all? Did they show up with an attorney? And then what were the agreements? So you have a full agreement, a partial agreement, no agreement, temp agreement, what happened. The mediator has to sign it, and then you have to put certificate of service. So who is the document going to? And then at the bottom, at the bottom, you have to put the cost. So in the Fourth Circuit, like I said, it's $60 if they make less than $50,000 combined. It's $120 each if they make more. So pretty straightforward. They pay directly to the clerk of court's office. So just push them that direction. Okay, so where can you work and what can you earn? So court-ordered cases through most circuits in Florida are scheduled for a maximum of 3 hours. So when I talk about fees per session, that actually means 3 hours. So private mediation can go all day or can even be split up across multiple days. And in those, they're always charging per hour. It just depends on how intensive the case is. And I usually, I have a 2-hour minimum for any booking. So that if someone books a mediation and they come and go in 30 minutes, I'm still gonna get paid for 2 hours because I set aside that whole morning to mediate for them, whether they needed that much time or not, right? So you gotta figure out how to protect your time. The rates you earn vary dramatically by circuit. So in the Fourth Circuit, which is up where I live in St. Augustine, it's just north of me, so Duval, Nassau, and Clay counties, they pay $80 a session, which is $80 for 3 hours. The Third Circuit pays $100 an hour, so you can earn up to $300 for a session. And then the Fifth Circuit pays $45 an hour, so you can earn up to $135 a session. So the fees vary widely on court-ordered cases. Now, if you are a lucky ducky and you get a court order to you with parties that have attorneys, that is the exception to the rule, because in that instance, the judge ordered them to use you and to pay your fees, which you can set. So you must provide the judge's clerk with an order of referral template that outlines your fees and payment policies. You want to be very specific in your template as to your fees, their payment obligations, the timeline of when the documents need to be submitted to you ahead of mediation, and your cancellation policy. And it needs to state, and I've learned this recently, that both parties must agree to cancel or reschedule a mediation. Otherwise, one party will cancel or reschedule incessantly as a delay tactic. And that pisses the other party off substantially. So trust me on this, your cancellation policy should be bulletproof. They have to agree. And once you're certified, you can work throughout the entire state virtually. You don't stuck in whatever circuit you happen to live near. And there's no in-person requirement for mediation right now. Ever since COVID, they sent us all home and we never went back. And all of the court-ordered cases for mediation are still 100% virtual via Zoom. So my colleagues at FMU in Duval County are sitting in the courthouse doing virtual mediations from the courthouse. They don't need to be in the courthouse. They're in the courthouse. But the clients and everybody else are at home. The attorneys are in their offices. It doesn't matter. We use the Zoom session and I create breakout rooms. And so when everyone comes in, you do an opening, and then you can split the attorneys and the parties into their own breakout rooms. So you can go back and forth to their different rooms to negotiate so that they can each talk to you privately. So you really never need to go anywhere. Okay, we have any other questions? Here's my contact information. If anybody is interested and decides to do their training or wants to observe a session or whatever, I'd be happy to.
All right, I encourage you all to come off of mute and ask questions. Any additional details you want to catch or anything like that. The training is usually how many hours, Danielle?
I think it's 40 hours.
40 hours of training, okay.
Yeah.
All right, and I had heard a thing about watch one, do do one, and then do one. Is that still true?
Basically, I mean, if you can find someone that will let you co-mediate, that's great, but just observing, you get the same amount of information. You just, the biggest thing that helped me when I was training was to find attorneys willing to share their templates with me, so that you have all the different types of templates. So if anybody wants templates, I'm happy to share. I collected a lot of templates too from people in my training class. I actually had a retiring family law judge in my training class, and so he gave me his template. So I have all the like really ironclad language, standard clauses.
Nice.
So
Nice.
yeah, because I was like, oh, he was like, here. So
yeah, Melanie was just asking about your templates. And so you have your contact information on the screen right now. So Melanie, go ahead and grab that info, and Danielle says she's happy to share. Isn't that nice? Aubrey asks, do people ever choose to meet in person?
Yes. I've been on the website for Jacksonville Family Mediator, Jacksonville Mediation, something whatever. And they have conference rooms there that we can rent and people can mediate in person. Honestly, no one's ever actually asked to mediate in person. Most of the time, it's a high stress, high conflict situation, and these people are happy to not have to see each other in person. Shirley has a question. Okay. What's your question, Shirley?
Yes, me again.
Hey.
So if once you finish your observations and your training class, can someone shadow you just to observe you while you're doing like your first or second mediation and make sure you're on track? Like, how does that work?
Well, if you can find somebody that'll do it, it's not part of the requirements. Like once you're licensed, they kind of like, there you go, into the wind. But if you feel more comfortable having someone with you, honestly, it's kind of like when you first started therapy, and I know this because I'm still a registered intern, it's like fake it until you make it. Just kind of act like you know what's happening. You'll be
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep. Anybody else? Oh, I see there's stuff in the chat box. Oh, no.
Danielle, would you recommend that people finish? Well, they have to have a master's, or that gives them points, right, to have the master's.
Yeah, so the way licensure works is on a point system. So if you already have a master's degree in any field, like a master's in marriage and family therapy, fantastic. I think you get like over half the points you need to get licensed just with that. And then you have to do the observations to get the rest of the points to get licensed.
Okay. So finishing the master's will help with the points part. But if you have another master's, that would be a jump start. But yeah, and Carla wants to know, is this strictly a Monday to Friday 8 to 5 kind of work, or does this go into the evening?
So you can set your own hours. The circuit courts only do mediations Monday to Friday 8 to 5. So if you get court ordered sessions, like the Fourth Circuit usually books 2 a day, so you have a 9 a.m. and a 1 p.m. typically. But in private, if you want to offer a weeknight on your calendar that's open, or a Saturday morning every other week that's open, you can definitely do that, and people definitely appreciate the flexibility because people work and they're trying to get divorced and it's stressful.
Would it be the first step to take in order to start the process, or what would be the first step to take in order to start the process? So assuming you already have a master's, right? Or maybe even a license. And by the way, does the license give you any points, or only the master's?
Just the masters.
Just so getting your license is not a benefit as far as the points are concerned. Okay. So is the next thing then to take the 40-hour class, or what's the next step?
Yeah, take the class, because the class is always required, and then they'll give you actually a big binder. I can show you.
Right. And usually I believe this class is offered like a week. So it's like Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, right? It's the class is usually one solid week, or is it offered in weekends, or?
But yeah, they have different schedules. The class I did was offered over a 4-day period over a weekend.
Oh,
so
like a Friday to Monday or a Thursday to Sunday kind of thing.
So I did it August 4th through 8th. So it was over a weekend back in 2021, and it was 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. the first day, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., 9 a.m. to, yeah. So it's basically like 4 intensive long days.
Okay. And is it offered only by just the one organization? So you would go to their website to find those classes?
No. So there's a bunch of different places that are approved by the Dispute Resolution Center to train mediators. You can kind of shop around. They all cost about the same. I want to say it was about $400 for the training.
That's not bad.
When I did it, it's not bad.
And you can drop even more, way more than that for Gottman or EFT training. So yeah,
100%.
So a person could just Google Florida mediation training, and a bunch of different websites would come up.
This is the one I did, and it's called Florida Mediation Training.
That's pretty straightforward, huh?
So it's pretty straightforward. And they mail you this huge binder, so you have all this information. And
this was virtual, right? Your training was virtual?
Yep, it was virtual, but you do role play, and you do, work on writing out different pieces of an agreement, and you do conflict resolution strategies for high conflict parents, and you do all of it. You do lots of stuff. And it was funny because when I was doing it, it was all new, but as a therapist now, it would have been a lot easier because you know a lot of that stuff by the time you do it. So
having your master's and having therapeutic skills is a big benefit. I mean, that you'll already have a big chunk of the kind of skills that you need.
Yeah. And in fact, I would have to look, but I think you actually get more points for having a master's in therapy than you do with any other master's. I think it's like extra points because it is so well aligned to the profession.
Nice.
I have another question.
Yes, please.
What about clientele? Is this an oversaturated position, or do you think once you complete all the requirements, if you build it, they will come kind of thing? Like, how are we building the clientele?
Yeah, I mean, it could be tough. It took a lot of legwork for me to reach out to the different family mediation units around the state. When you're a new mediator, that's usually a good place to start, is to work as a contractor. There are some hoops with working for the state, just extra contracts and different things like renewals every year. You have to carry a certain amount of insurance, which is not a lot, but you have to carry insurance. But for private mediations, I mean, I threw up a website and I get a few leads, a month, not a lot. But you also need to network with lawyers and, family law attorneys in your area, drop off business cards and show up to some of their different networking events. And it does take some legwork to start getting out there so that people know that you're there. Have a social media presence, put up a website, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Now, we have a question from Faith. So she wants a little more detail on the point system. I believe what you said is that having the master's, or even better, a master's in some counseling field, gets you a big chunk of the points, and then you said the rest of the points are when you observe other people do mediation, or there are other ways.
Yeah, so the rest of the points are when you observe mediation session. So it's really only the two things that you need to do. It's do your training class and finish your observations. When you've done all of those things, and there's forms. So like when somebody observes me, they have to send me this form and I have to sign it and say what case it was that they watched. And, as a mediator, I sign off on it. You have to have all of those and compile them and turn them in with your application. There's an application just like to be a therapist. You have to go get fingerprinted and they'll do a level 3 background check.
But those aren't the point. Those aren't the points things. Those are just things you got to do.
Yeah, those things you got to do.
So if you have your master's in marriage and family, in order to get the rest of the points, about how many observations would you need to have to max out the points you need?
You know what? Let me look it up because I haven't looked at that in a long time.
Okay. Clearly more than one.
Yeah.
Right.
It's several. It's several.
Several. Okay. And when you started out, did you have a hard time finding someone willing to let you observe, or?
So sometimes. So here we go. This is what you guys need. Aha. I'm gonna send this. This is the PDF that has all of the information in here.
Okay, so that's the extension right there.
Yeah, so you get, let's see, for family, you get 30 points for the training. You get 25 points for education, and then you need 30 points for mentorship, and you get 15 additional points for higher education, mediation experience, or other miscellaneous. So they add them all up. So like, I think if you have a master's degree in any field, you get 25 points, but if you have a master's degree in therapy, I think you get the extra 15 automatically. So that gets you to, you need 100 points altogether. So that gets you there faster. Here, let me show you. So 30, you get 30 points for doing your training. You get 25 points for either your regular education or your mediation experience. And then you need 30 points for mentorship. And then you get 15 additional points for either additional mentorship or higher education or mediation experience. So they do it like this because some people are coming in as a lawyer and they already know everything. And so they don't need to do a lot of mentorship, they don't need to do a lot of observations in order to get where they need to be.
So like the person asked earlier, if they were trained in in mediation in another jurisdiction like Boston, they
Mhm.
might get the extra 15 points
Yeah,
for
having
that.
prior mediation experience.
Right. They do
Yeah.
they get that 15 points, and then they might get another 15 points for having a master's in marriage and family therapy.
Right. So this is the
Gotcha.
education and like this is the points thing. So if you have a PhD, you already get 40 points.
Wow.
If you have a doctorate, you only get 30 points. So if you have a JD doctorate, you're already a lawyer, you get the 30 points. If you have a master's in conflict resolution, you get 30 points. If you have a master's in anything at all, basket weaving, you get 25. Right? Like, and then if you have some sort of graduate certificate in conflict resolution, and a bachelor's degree, you get 25. If you've mediated 15 cases of any type, in Florida and have a bachelor's degree, you get 25. So they give you additional points for experience level. And
Okay.
I think each observation, yeah, it's 5 points. So each observation session gives you 5 points. So if you need 30 points total of observation sessions, somebody who's good with math, please help. It's however many that is. You need 6 observation sessions.
What's the difference between observation and supervised mediation?
So supervised mediation would be like if you're planning to be a circuit mediator and work in their mediation unit, they have very experienced mediators there that could supervise you and give you those additional points.
Gotcha. So that would be another one of those networking things that you'd have to connect with someone. Okay. But like if someone came and observed you doing a mediation, they could get the 5 points for that.
Yeah. So like you get an additional 5 points if you have any degree in psychology.
Okay.
Social work, healthcare, mental health, education, additional 5 points. So it definitely helps you get to the point total faster. But you still have to do your probably 6 observations.
Okay. All right. Let me see if I've lost. So someone said that they were unable to get the link to open up. So if they were to just Google it, then it would be, then they would do, just get to floridacourts.gov and then start to poke around.
Yeah, also, if you copy that link, if you erase the first part of it, delete the first part and start at the HTTPS www.
Then it works. Okay,
Yeah.
just the blue part. So if you do just the blue part, that would be great.
And I'm going to put for everybody the link to the training course that I did. I thought they did a really good job. I am not in cahoots with them. I'm not telling you should use them. There's no pay coming to me for this, but I thought they did a good job. So just if you want to check them out, they were very thorough. Their trainer was really knowledgeable, and yeah, I thought it was good.
Well, Danielle, thank you so much. I'm looking at the time. I would like to encourage all of you to go to the Florida Family Therapy Alliance.com website. And there you can join as a member if you are a licensed person and want CEUs. It's $100 and you can get CEUs for the rest of this year, including the 4 we're offering at the end of the year, September, October, November, December, 4 workshops that are part of the licensure renewal, including telemental health, ethics and boundaries, domestic violence, and preventions of medical errors. So that alone would more than pay for your $100 membership. For those of you who are not licensed, our fee is $25, and it allows you to come to all of the workshops prepaid. So you don't have to register through Eventbrite anymore. You can just attend because I'll have your name as a part of membership. So those of you who were unable to purchase the CEU version of today, I'll go ahead and give you credit for it because I know we kind of sold out of those. So that's pretty cool. So I'll be happy to give you credit, but you'll make life so much easier for me and yourself if you just join as a member. So any lingering questions that we have before we say goodnight? No? Well, thank you everyone for coming tonight. I hope that you will plan to come on June 19th. That's Wednesday, June 19th. We're going to have a Juneteenth panel of African-American female MFTs who are going to talk about why we should care about Juneteenth and a little bit about that history. I hope you'll come then. In July, we have a trauma and the family workshop. And in August, we have a holistic medicine, body and the mind workshop, and that will actually be a 2-hour workshop. So now is a great time to purchase membership. You'll be able to attend all of those workshops as well as the licensure renewal workshops. So just wanted to give you that heads up. Again, that's FloridaFamilyTherapyAlliance.com. And Danielle will be thrilled to see your payment and put you on our membership list. So thank you all for coming this evening. I hope you have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.